Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fun episode of 1000 Gurus with me, your host, Jay Yonocruz. Today's episode features Jane O. Jane was born and raised in California and now lives in Denver, Colorado. She has spent the last 10 years in marketing in various fields, and over time, her focus has shifted towards holistic health and wellness, and she is now in the process of fully transitioning her career into nursing. She's also a certified yoga instructor and health coach, and previously ran an online coaching practice called Well with Jane. So, Jane is another fantastic former colleague turned friend. She is a fellow April baby, and she is a fellow workout and personal development enthusiast. I've always respected Jane as a coworker. She even introduced me to my first circuit training gym back in the day. Early in my career, Jane was the only person I knew who did double workouts, and we kind of get into that a bit in the conversation. We, of course, reminisce about our days working at our old law firm and how cutthroat it was. And we get into her journey from marketing to yoga to holistic health and now going back to school for nursing. It was such a joy to connect with Jane after all these years. I learned a ton, and her journey is nothing short of inspiring for me personally. So without further ado, hope you guys enjoyed this fun episode with Jane O. Hello and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Please welcome my guest, Jane.
Hi.
Jane, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Happy early Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, for the audience, this is Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving. We're recording this. Yeah, we're just kind of catching up off screen or off camera before we started recording. So, let me go into how I know you. The audience already has an idea of your background based on your bio. So, Jane and I used to work at Bergner Mrozowski Law Firm back in, I want to say 2015, 2016-ish, around there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong for any of these things. And so you used to work in the marketing side, and I was in liens and negotiations. And we also used to work with Clark and Ali, who were also on the show. Shout out to them. And then you moved to Colorado. You mentioned 2021, and I've also been kind of following your career journey in the health and wellness space and yoga, and because we're connected on social media.
Yeah.
And so now we're here.
Yeah.
So any clarifications, or what else are you up to?
No, that's really, in a nutshell, really how my life has been, just like the milestone timelines. Yeah, it started law firm, health and wellness, and then Denver. And yeah, that's what's been happening.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I ever asked this, but how did you get into the law firm? Like, how did you find that job, and what were you doing before then?
Yeah. So I was working at Forever 21 headquarters office. That was
That's
like,
right.
yeah, that was my first out of college job. And I ended up getting fired from that job, which hilarious because I feel like they're a huge conglomerate. And it was such a weird, it was like a whole team. Like my boss also got fired at the same time. But yeah, at that time, I like right out of college, I had I didn't really know what I was planning on doing, but I did graduate with a degree in business management and econ. So I knew sort of wanting to go towards marketing. So once I got fired from Forever 21, and that was like, I think I was 21, 22. I don't know. I was looking around. So I had a couple different jobs in between. And then I actually found the job posting for Bergner Mrozowski on a Craigslist ad. And
Oh.
at the time, I was also interviewing for, it was an airline company. I can't remember. I think it was like either United or Alaskan Airline.
Uh-huh.
And ironically, both of those interviews were supposed to be in Orange County because I was going to get interviewed at the John Wayne Airport, like their base there. And the law firm also was based out of Orange County. So I kind of, at the time I think I was living in Diamond Bar. So it was like a 40-minute commute. And I was like, okay, well, I went from LA to Diamond Bar. And then I was like, well, I don't want to live in Diamond Bar. And so I eventually was running through the two interviews. And then the airline company essentially botched the interview. They never gave me an interview time or date. They were like, we'll send you a confirmation email. And that was the same day that I was having the interview at the law firm.
Uh,
So I was like kind of like double stacking. I was like, if I'm going to be out there, then I'm going to just like, try to get two interviews out of the way. And they never got back to me. And so I ended up just going to the interview at the law firm. And I went originally for a case manager position. I knew that wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I was still interested. But on the job description, it said if your skill sets fit a different position, we are a growing company. So I was like, perfect. So I was going through the interview and I went home after that first like case manager interview and I walked out of it. I was like, I don't know if that is anything that like would interest me. But as soon as I got home, I got a call from our HR director at the time. And she said, I don't think you're meant for the case manager role, but we have a role in marketing. And I think your resume aligns better with the marketing position. And so she was like, do you mind coming out for another interview for the marketing position and meeting with our marketing director? That's kind of how it started. And then the marketing team was very small. And it was definitely, at the time, the firm was still really tiny. Like, I don't know if you remember the name game.
Yes, of course. The good old
So-
hazing name game. Yeah, I was about to ask
yeah.
like what size, like how big was the company when you joined?
So it was, I think at that time, it was, I think only like 10 people.
Yeah,
Because it
yeah.
was really only because the teams were like 3-3-3.
Right, right,
At that
right.
time, we didn't really have many teams. Once, I think by the second year was when we had that massive growth. But so any new hire that started at the company on the Monday morning meeting, you had to play this horrible game where everyone says their name once, and then you have to go through and try to remember everyone's name. When I started, I don't know if you had to do that because I think you were already working there.
Did you start after me or before? I thought you started before me.
Oh, I
Was it
can't
after?
remember.
I'm sure we were around the same time, but
Yeah,
yeah. But
because
yeah,
it
no, I
didn't.
definitely did the name game.
Yeah, and it wasn't difficult because there weren't as many people, but by the time we grew to like
Yeah.
20, like 25 people, I would feel so bad. And it was like the worst, like sitting there watching people like botch names. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you. I'm so sorry that you have to do this. And then we all just have to stand there and watch. It was the worst.
Okay,
It was so bad. And then they
no,
had to have
yeah.
an embarrassing story. So that's how I got into marketing.
Okay, so yeah, I love that. I'll add a few things on top of that. So I think when I joined, it was around the 20-ish, maybe low 20 or maybe high
Yeah.
teens sort of number. And yeah, so when we were there, it was a lot less, it was more doable with around 20 or less. But by the time when I was coming to the end of working there, it was like 30, 40, 50 people almost. Like literally the new conference room, like we would wrap around all over it and then like even outside or we had to move or something
Yeah.
like that. So every time there's a
Yeah.
new person or the Monday morning meetings, it was always so hectic. And then people would give like would we give hints? We would s- say our names and
Yeah.
then say something, and then as we go around, like Sam or James would kind of like see like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this person, and then give him a hint, and this person's like struggling, and then you get to the end, and it's like, all right, well, what's our names, like Sam and James, and then we all look and hold our breath, like, please remember Sam and James' name.
And there are people who forgot and
Yeah,
then they're like, "Oh."
we're like, oh,
I was like, "This is so bad." I felt like I was like, "What a great way to start like
right.
first day on the job."
It's
And
like
I was
you
like,
missed the
"Gosh,
boss's
it was
names.
mortifying."
Yeah, that's so funny. Was do you have a story, or was that it? The thing you wanted to bring up? I was gonna ask.
No, there's a bunch of things, but I was randomly thinking about the other day because I was cleaning out my cabinet full of Tupperwares, and I randomly started thinking about the company lunches that we
Yes.
would have, and then they would it was really good food, and then we would go in after to get everything packed
Just
in a
scavenge
Tupperware.
it. Yeah.
And then they basically told us, like, we will let you know when the leftovers, when everyone has consumed food. And I was like, man, our marketing team was in there. Like, we were so fast. And I was like, we seem just like starving artists trying to survive. Like, and then they started, I don't know if you recall, it started off with small, glad containers. So like just like
uh,
the tiny ones. And
yeah.
then we had to upgrade to like the big ones. And I was like cleaning out my cabinets or my Tupperware drawer, and I was like finding like the bigger plastic ones that I had, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I totally remember just trying to like stack as much food, and I was like,
Wait, so you
that
have those
fed me.
Tupperware still?
No, no.
Okay,
These are
okay.
like the same size.
Oh,
If I
okay,
still
okay.
had those Tupperwares, I it'd be a I think I would be traumatized. Like I'm like
Yeah. No, I remember that too. Cause I had these glass ones that I actually still have, but
Mhm.
remember the days where like, okay, we know we're getting lunch today. I wouldn't pack it. It would just be clean and empty. And then we'd wait until afterwards and then, yeah, I would just stuff it in. Man.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
And then
man, I
like,
remember that.
yeah, the birthdays, because our birthdays are in April. So like we
Yeah.
would have like our birthday photo shoot. And it was really the three of us. April was like a smaller month.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember that, but I remember the marketing team we were in charge of that. And it was like when there were bigger groups each month, like I was like, because yeah, it became chaotic because as the team started growing so rapidly, we were like, I don't know if we could handle like every month gathering everyone and then having them choose like what theme they wanted for their birthday photos.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I
what
remember
was the
like
protocol for the birthdays? Like, what did we do? I don't
I
remember. Was it
think
just we got food and that was it, or was there like a thing that they
yeah.
did?
Yeah, so I want to say we did like the monthly birthday lunch, but then we had a card for
Oh,
every time there was a birthday, like there was a rotating card.
right, right.
And I remember one time on my birthday card, someone thought it was James Bergner's
Oh,
birthday. So everyone was writing like happy birthday, Jane. And then someone put you rock, James. And I was like, ever like, were you the first one? And I remember I got it and it was like right in the center, like where the card like creases. And I was like, so you weren't the first one if like that's the spot. But you failed to read like and like someone had put on that same card, someone wrote my name in block letters. And so it was
mm.
like stamped there.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
maybe they like quickly saw it and then they were like, you rock, James. I was like, oh, well,
Man, it
close.
must have been a long day for that person. They were just like, who is it?
Oh, I
James,
bet.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. Oh, what a place.
Yeah. I might have already mentioned this, but I don't have a specific story, but I I always remember the Monday morning meetings and then we would have stories, right? Like James would ask us he would ask for like 3 to 4 volunteers for stories.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you were still there, right? Where
Yeah.
they would get a few and then it got to the point where I would go into the weekend looking for stories so that I could, have a good story for everyone, right? And
Yeah.
then James knew that, and so he would save me for the end as
Oh,
anchor, like me and Joel.
yeah.
And so he'd be like, "All right,
That's
Marlo, anchor."
right.
Yeah, and so I was like, "All right, I got you. Here's my story. We had a rager at my house, and I slept through it. And also for my birthday,
Oh,
my
yeah.
girlfriend took me to a spa." And they're like, "What?" So it was things like that. And if not me, then Joel would also have really good stories too, or something like that.
Yeah, I totally forgot that you guys were the anchor. And I remember the story where you were like, there was a rager and I was sleeping the entire
Yeah,
time.
there were multiple rages where I was sleeping, and then I was telling them about how we had like a bunk couch, kind of like the Lego movie or one of the Lego movies, and
Okay,
then it
okay.
was like throwing people off. I was like, no, we honestly have a bunk couch, but I wasn't participating in the party. I was just sleeping because I worked the next day.
Yeah. It also, during those meetings, it was also mortifying because remember when they would just start picking people? They're like, what did you do this
Yeah,
weekend?
yeah, yeah.
And I remember there were times where at the time, like I was young, I was always going out to LA on the weekends. And I'm like, I'm not going to share with you what I did this
Yeah,
weekend. And I'm like, oh no, I just meal prepped and did
yeah,
stuff. But I always
just chores.
remember like saying that. And then in my head, I am like replaying everything I did that weekend. And I was like, I saw a guy dancing on a table with a Speedo on. Like, I'm just like thinking of all these random things. And I'm like, oh no, I just did chores and, meal prepped and cleaned the house and that's it.
Usual Jane weekend, nothing
Yeah.
crazy.
And I'm like, that's it. And then, yeah, and I'm sure everyone's experience was the same. Like, they're like,
Yeah.
just, hung out. And I'm like, I saw you this weekend.
I don't know about that because I saw you.
Yeah. And I'm like, we'll just keep it at chores.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's always a weird, like, I'm sure more people had more interesting stories, but aside from the whole, yeah,
Yeah.
the family and I, we went camping and it was a lot of fun and we caught a fish, right? This sort of work appropriate stories. I'm sure people were skirting the line between that and just like, yeah, no, I didn't really do anything because no one wants to come to work and then have that impression. And then, we know what the work office environment was like. Like, it was
Yeah.
pretty strict and like, it's for the audience, it's a law firm, so everyone is like suit and tie, formal wear, business
Yeah.
attire. And so even though we would have these moments, it was still mostly like very strict. And so yeah, it made sense that not a lot of people wanted to like be very out there with their stories.
Yeah.
I don't know why I
Yeah.
got away with it. I'm just like, yeah, no, I did like weird stuff. It wasn't anything like that I would get in trouble for. It was just, I guess I wanted to find the storytelling elements, even if it was a boring story, just for the
Yeah.
fun of it. But yeah, I also didn't cross that line too. Like I didn't want to divulge everything. So
Yeah. Yeah. And look at you now.
yeah, no, just saying random stuff, you know?
You have been the anchor through and through.
Yeah. I always thought it was fun because, yeah, I don't know. It was just always to me, it was always a challenge, and it was fun that James kind of gave me that responsibility of like
Yeah.
telling the stories. I'm like, it's a Monday, might as well make it lively and not too crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, good times.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah. And there
Cool.
were people who would share
Yeah.
their, and I'm like, please, no, please stop.
Yeah.
Don't.
That's
Like, because
true.
we
That's
had a
true.
lot of young, like, this was their very
Yes.
first time in like
Yes.
a suit and tie type of environment. And I was like, oh, no, 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 that is very inappropriate. Don't. And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah, I know, like, from what I heard, and this is probably hearsay, but even especially the attorneys, I think they were told, like, not to go too overboard with their story because they are, like, the leaders in the company, right? Like,
yeah,
they're managing their teams. And so
yeah,
that made sense. And so I guess for people like us that were not attorneys, we could probably get away with a little bit more fun stories. But,
yeah,
and then,
yeah,
like you said, the younger people, like, this is their first job out of college, or maybe just, like, their first job out of high school or something. And then we're just like, oh, no, don't, oh, they said it.
yeah.
Oh, we'll see how this goes.
I used to
Yeah.
also sit when like the marketing team was still upstairs. So it was like two floors. And then eventually the marketing team and like our intake like team moved downstairs. When we were upstairs, my desk was right next to HR. And HR had their floor to ceiling like window. So when people were getting talked to, it was so awkward because I'm sitting parallel to them. And that was like the only window that I had. So like the light would come like through that window. And I remember I would look over and then I would be like, the mood there is not good. Like someone's crying. I remember there was like an argument, and I was just like, I think I need to move desks. I was like, I don't think it's appropriate for me to and I could hear because it was like close enough. And I was
Uh,
like, oh man, this is so awkward. So I would just try to, but at the time we just had like desktops, like we had the computers that were stuck to our desk. So I couldn't even
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
anything. I was just like, and then they would walk out and then you'd hear like, okay, well, thank you. And I'm just like, I don't know where to look.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so funny because like at the which building was it? Well, it might have been both. But my once I moved into accounting, both of my desks in both buildings were always next to Sam's office. And
Yeah.
then, so for those who don't know, like Sam was also one of the partners. But then, whenever
Yeah.
there was like an HR or like a talking to sort of thing, they would go into usually Sam's office with
Oh,
the
yeah,
HR
and you just
director.
had the door,
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So before so the first building at the high rise one, yeah, I was like right outside the door. And so yeah,
Yeah.
they left I can see, and so all the aftermath was there. But then in the newer building that was only 2 floors, yeah, we were accounting department, we were still like right outside Sam's office,
Yeah.
so it's not like
Yeah.
we wouldn't be privy to that. And then also I would be the ones printing the like severance checks, or like, the last payroll check, so that they can never come
Yeah.
back. And then, so whenever I got like a message like, oh, print this check for this amount, I was like, oh, someone's getting fired.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what a place.
Yeah,
That place
man.
does give me trauma.
Yeah, I'm sure it gives a lot of people trauma. Um,
Yeah. Had a
so
lot of
yeah,
great times, but
of course, yeah.
yeah.
The like good
Oh,
memories, learned a lot for sure. I would say that's the biggest
yes.
thing that I
Yeah.
appreciate about that work experience. It was very tough. I would tell some of my friends this, like it was probably the one of the toughest work environments I've been in. But because of that, it's like something I learned from Sam actually, which is like smooth seas don't create good sailors. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it's a way to kind of desensitize you to that hectic work environment, but also taking it to heart, it did help me prepare, because like, okay, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. And then I did
Yeah.
get through it, and then it made it a lot easier. And then being in that space where it's like, okay, now you can have mastery and have a good workflow and not be stressed out constantly. It's a good
Yeah.
place to be because you feel like you're actually growing, and then you can
Yeah.
help other people too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was fun but tough, but yeah, and also very traumatizing for many people.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay, all right. Well, that was a lot of fun. I That's the part I like most about these intro topics, is the reminiscing. All right, so we'll go into now the main topics, if there's nothing else you want to add. So as usual, we'll go into my guest's background and sort of career journey. So first question is, like, where did you grow up and what were your main influences?
Yeah. I grew up in Southern California my entire life. I just kind of everywhere, Inland Empire to Orange County. And I I guess like for influence wise, I grew up with immigrant parents. And so definitely the biggest influence was like work hard. I think the biggest struggle I have now, especially since I'm having this like transition in my career and what I'm learning and what I've learned, especially at the law firm too, is like just hard work. Hard work and grit will get you somewhere. And that's what I followed for a really long time. And then I just, of course, got burnt out. Like, I realized I felt like a hamster just, like, running on the wheel. Like, I didn't feel like I was progressing. And so, yeah, I feel like in terms of that kind of once I got into college, I had just a lack of direction. I went because that was sort of what I needed to do. Like college was after high school, got through the 4 years. But I do remember that first semester, I called my mom. I was like, I don't want to be in college. I could just start a business, mom. Like I could be like you and I can just start a business and make money. And she was like, that's not how, she was like, that's not, that's not going to happen. You will complete college, which I'm glad that, I had that conversation with her. But yeah, my entire undergrad year, no sense of direction. I was actually looking through my transcript and I had changed my major, I think like a good handful of times. I felt like the entire time I was really searching for purpose. And it was discouraging because you have all these people who get into college who are so motivated, know what their majors are, and then you see them now and they've kind of carried that path on and they're, doing whatever they were studying and they've become like experts in that field. And yeah, the influence, like, wasn't there. It was just, like, hard work, grit, like, keep going, and I think at Berg, that because that was one of the first jobs where it was, like, my first marketing job in a firm where we were growing rapidly, and we were starting to do bigger things. It wasn't just, like, email campaigns or just kind of, like, different ways to reach people. We were on radio stations. We
Uh,
started working with celebrities. We were working with sports teams. So, like, it was the first time that I actually felt like this is my big girl job. And I was also the only female, like, within the marketing position after our marketing director had left that started taking on more roles. And so, me being young and being the only female, because at the time it was like our marketing team were all males. We had one part time girl and she would come in, but she was in college. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take this role on and really excel. And at that point, I felt like I did. Like I had gotten my own office. I was working with like both the attorneys fairly closely. I felt like I was in a very big leadership role. And then our marketing team started growing. And then I was managing, I think at one point it was like a team of 11.
Mm,
And then I got burnt out. I felt like at a certain point, I will say, I think NDAs are now fine, but there's a bit of nepotism
mm,
in Bergner. So it was tough to see growth outside of where I was at. So I knew I was capped. Like I was just marketing coordinator, but I was taking on roles for a higher, like marketing manager, or almost like, I don't want to like crap on who was our director of marketing, but at that point, I was the go-to person.
mm,
So I was like, wow, look at me. Like I thought I had no direction in college. And then I found myself in my own office. I was really proud. I was the youngest person within our like department that had stepped up to the plate and started organizing, coordinating all these things. And then eventually the firm started having some disruptions, I guess. And there was like a rift happening, and I didn't want to be part of that. So at
mm,
that time, that's when I asked to be remote because I was like, I don't think we're going to be doing events or things that I need to be there physically for. So I had expressed, I don't think that this is a good environment for myself. I was like, this isn't a place where I can continuously grow. So I was trying to find a way out, and I asked to work remotely. So at that time, that's when I moved to Mammoth. And then once I was in Mammoth, I think I was like working remote for about a year. And then the firm split up. And then I started working for the other partner attorney. But yeah, throughout that time, because like towards the end of it, that's when I started really focusing on the health and wellness part because I was like, I can't continue to do this. I think I was 25 and I wasn't doing it. I was overworking myself physically and mentally. And again, it's just that hard work and grit. Like that's all you have to do. But I didn't ever think about you could also do something that aligns better with what you enjoy. Because I am a firm believer of like, you can enjoy something at work, like you can enjoy work, but you should also separate that from like your personal life because you don't want that to blend together. But at that time, everything was starting to blend. And I was young, so I didn't have any boundaries for that. So it started severing my relationships outside of work. I was a grumpy person. I was like doing double workouts, just like trying to find something to relieve the stress and like just like an outlet. But then because I was so sucked into work, I had lost that outlet with my friends. And I was like, I don't have the energy to go party, or I didn't want to drive out to LA after a crazy week where I was like, this is nuts. And that's when I started realizing like hard work and grit that may have worked, but that's not something that could be sustainable. And it's not something that like can help you grow. And then I just found myself lost again. I was like, what am I? Because the influence was that. That was my entire posted on the wall. Like that's all I followed. And then once I got to college, once I started seeing like my peers and colleagues there already motivated, like they knew immediately what their major was going to be. They're like, oh yeah, my family, so and so in my family is this, and that's what I was inspired by. And I was like, I have that, but like not really. And so at that point, I just found myself lost, and I felt like I was lost trying to figure out what my purpose was. Like I was like, okay, I've done marketing for so long now. Does it bring me joy? Am I making an impact? What is marketing? Yeah, I had a little bit of an existential crisis.
right. As we all do once in a while, right? Or
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
once. I'm curious. I know you mentioned a lot of different elements just now, but in retrospect, what do you think contributed to that burnout? I know we might all have different conceptions of what burnout is, but I'm
yeah.
curious what your conception of it is and the main elements that contributed to that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was validation because I wanted so badly to be in a leadership role, and I knew that I was capable. And so I was doing everything in my power to go above and beyond to show upper management, like I could handle this. And that essentially, like, especially because I was at the firm for at least half of my professional career were at the law firms. And it's a cutthroat field. And I think, yeah, it was seeking validation because I was like, hey, I'm one of the youngest in this role. I really wanted to show them that I could be marketing director or I could be higher up. At a certain point, I knew that wasn't going to happen anymore. But once the firm had split, I was in a head of marketing role. And I was like, okay, this is what I wanted. But then it's so cutthroat. It went in a different direction than I had in mind, that what I envisioned. And at the time, the second firm, like the firm that the partner was creating, it was newer. So we're starting from the ground up. Budget was much smaller and it wasn't California based. It was Nevada based.
Nevada. All
So
right,
we were
right.
doing a lot of traveling to and fro same day from Orange County to Vegas. Like we would fly out in the morning, I'd come back at night. And then even still trying to manage new relations, like I'd go into these like big wig meetings and I was like, imposter syndrome hit. And I was like, am I meant for this? And I'm like, what are we talking about right now? What are these metrics? And so, yeah, I was seeking validation so much. And in my mind, like I was like, it was like Mad Men, you know. I was like, okay, we're dressed nice, like we can like it's the idea of it that I think I was infatuated with rather than what I was actually doing, like the content, like the meat and the potatoes of my actual job. So I think in that sense, it ended up burning me out because I again didn't have an outlet. Like that's all I was doing. I was just thinking about ways on like, okay, what could I do to, look like I can play the part? And then eventually it just, I was like, what am I doing all of this for? I didn't feel good about myself physically or mentally. I felt like I didn't know anything at work. There were times where I couldn't even think about writing copy. Like it's just simple lines. And I was like, I don't know how to be creative anymore. And so that seeking validation ended up really just, I guess, one discombobulated me, but I lost what my goal was, like what I was striving for. And then I was like, what am I doing in marketing? What role am I playing? And marketing is such a broad, I mean, most roles are, but marketing can be anything.
Right.
And when you're asked to focus on everything, you're spread so thin that you're like, what can I focus on to really excel?
Mm,
And I really felt like I was just half assing everything. I wasn't learning. And at that point, I felt like I was just drowning. And I was like, I don't feel good about this. And it started creating a rift between myself and upper management. It just, because I was like, I no longer believe in what I'm marketing. And that's, I think, the hardest part when you can't really align with what you're trying to let others believe and sell that product or, sell that vision when you don't believe it. A lot of that just boiled down to a lot of nothing. And then I was like, oh, I think I'm burnt out. I think I'm so burnt out. I can't even, I guess, recycle the thoughts of, okay, I can get out of this. There was none of that. It was just like, I have to push through. Like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I didn't need to do any of that. I
right,
could have
right.
just been like, it's fine. This is what I'm getting paid for to do. Like, I don't need to go above and beyond. This is what they're going to see. So now I think about it and I'm like, oh, so young, so naive.
Yeah. I mean, you had to learn, right? At least at some
Yeah.
point. Though,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure it was a painful learning experience. So I want to go into now at that end of your, I guess, that marketing cycle there into your pivots or anything after that. But I want to take a quick side tangent and ask, so when you're doing marketing for a law firm or in that sort of field, what are the main tasks or goals or initiatives that you're working on? Just kind of like the nuts and bolts for the audience
Yeah.
of like, what does a marketing manager, coordinator, director do at a law firm?
Yeah. So our law firm was, I mean, it grew massively, but we really started off with SEO marketing. So a lot of keywords, blogs, like what to do after a car accident, things that people would immediately Google after they got into an accident, and trying to get our law firm populated as like the number one ranking that essentially, and at that point, we weren't doing any paid ads. So it was all organic marketing. And that was a big portion of it. And then we started collaborating with different radio stations. And then through that, that became helping produce radio copy. So we had our principal attorney at the time had a segment on the radio for, I want to say, yeah, it was like the Dodgers radio station. So we were providing copy for material that they can talk about. So it was like, I think like a 15-30 minute segment. And I can't remember what it was called, but it like brings in the legal stuff from, like different events that happened within sports. At one point, there was a podcast, and it went from just like blogs to all of a sudden like all forms of media. Then we started doing commercials, so producing copy for commercials. And then once we started doing more of the actual like celebrity work, it was building relationships with them and then fostering that. So yeah, it went from blogs to media to fostering relationships. And that's what I mean when like marketing is so broad, because at that time we weren't doing paid ads, but that's a whole nother segment. And same thing with like radio ads. That was a whole nother segment. We were working with a different person and then getting connected with different like radio stars or athletes that we would try to get sponsorships from, or like collaborations and partnerships. So yeah, it definitely branched all over the spectrum.
I see, I see. So it wasn't like it was evolving, and so you were doing a lot of different things, and like what you mentioned near
Yeah.
the end, you were spread so thin because it's like it's so broad. There wasn't that feedback loop of you're doing the right things, you get the validation, you get the fulfillment, and you can see the impact it's making. But then at that point, you're also questioning like, is this even what I'm meant to do?
Yeah.
So I can see that.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense to me. So now I guess getting into that point where you burnt out. So was there something or a catalyst or some sort of pivot that you made at that point?
Yeah. So during that time, I got into a car accident, and it was actually on the way to one of our holiday parties, and I got rear-ended.
I remember that.
Yeah. And at like I had a herniated disc. And so I had to go through like all the things like chiropractor, PT. I ended up getting injections for it. It still consistently hurt. And the PT that I was working with, he was like, honestly, like this is something like that you will constantly need to work on. And Pilates or yoga, anything that's core strengthening will help you with your pain. And so essentially, as PT was ending, I ended up getting into yoga. And of course, like I was really into boot camp stuff, like CrossFit type of
Mhm.
like circuit training. But they were like, you can't really do that anymore, at least for the time being. Like, that's going to, make everything worse. So I ended up finding a yoga studio near my house. And in true fashion, like traditional yoga was really, really tough. Like I went to one like regular vinyasa yoga, and the entire time I was like, when are we going to speed this up? Like they're like, okay, now breathe. And that was really difficult as someone who's very impatient, like, like is like, okay, what's the next thing? So after that first class, I was like, I don't think I'm going to go back again. I found another class at that same studio where they were doing strength, but it was in a heated room. So it's like a mix of yoga and weights. So I did that, and I was like, okay, this is a good transition. Then I found they offered a yoga Pilates class, which is like Pilates and yoga. And that's what the PT had recommended. So I was like, great. So I'll do this. And that's essentially what like the car accident happened. Then all of the trying to fix my back really funneled into yoga and diving into sort of the holistic health and wellness space. I think I was going to the studio for like 7 months, and then they were going to do their yoga teacher training. And I was all in. So I ended up getting my certification through them. And then the yoga teacher training itself is a very transformative. Like I feel like it's one of those where you're reflecting a lot. It's not just about the yoga poses, but you're diving deep. Like
Mm.
you're like, there's a lot of like therapeutic sessions. And a big part of that is because as a yoga teacher, you're holding space for people who are coming in from all different like walks of life from all different types of trauma. And so it was becoming aware of how you show up and then, creating a safe space for the people that show up to your class. And that, I think, lit me up. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I have been looking for. This is what I need, especially because I was like the pinnacle of burnout. Like at that point, I was like, and then of course, like when you have an injury, you're down. You're like, this sucks. It's so hard to get out of the mindset of feeling low. And I felt more capable when I was doing yoga. Like I was like, I could actually move. I felt like I was being healthier because I was slowing down so much. And at that point, like that is honestly when like my social side started to open up again. That's when I met my partner, like my friends that I still hang out with now. That little tiny like certification, it was like 3 months, and that was probably the most appreciative and grateful thing I could have gone through at that time, because I don't know what would have happened on the other end of that. Like, I feel like I could have just been a crazy person at work and just like blown up on everyone. But essentially, that's like the start of it. And it's funny because it started with an injury. And then slowly I got more and more into it. And then now it's funny because even that has transitioned a little bit more, just with, I guess, I hate bringing politics into it, but like with the political climate and how things within the health space have changed, it's a it's been tricky, especially because I did get my health coaching certification. And while I believe that holistic health and wellness is very, very helpful and it's something that people can benefit from, now it gets a little bit tricky, especially as a health coach who people are like, I don't want to stay on my medication anymore. I'm like, no, no,
Mm.
no, no, no. Like, you need to be on your medication. This is not something that you can just cold turkey give up on. So I really think like the pendulum swings so far in the other direction. And I was like trying to find somewhere in the middle. And so, like, in terms of that, I feel like that's also been an interesting space to be, because I was so much into holistic, like everything holistic. I was crunchy. And then now I'm like, okay, we can dial that back a little bit. Like, now I see like maybe some of this doesn't benefit me as much as I thought it did. And then it's like finding that balance again, because I have a tendency to just go all in on everything. So now as I'm getting older, I'm like learning you can dabble first before you just like full on get into it. But that's like another lesson. I felt like that was like a healthier habit to get into, and it was a good outlet. But yeah, essentially it was the car accident that led
Mm.
me to yoga and Pilates.
Interesting, because I from what I remember, and I remember that like you and me and Jenna and maybe a couple others, we did do those circuit classes.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
so I remember there was a group of us that were really into fitness. I
Yeah.
do remember something, man, Jane, I feel like you have not changed in a good way, but like because I remember specifically one time you were telling me that you're like, oh yeah, I do double workouts. And then my brain, like
Yeah.
I work out every day too, but I'm like, double, like what? I couldn't conceive of that because I never met
Yeah.
anyone who did double workouts. And so to me, you've always been that sort of like full send
Yeah.
commit person. But I didn't know
Yeah.
that that was all because of the car accident. Were you working out before then and it just kind of, you incorporated yoga and then were more all that stuff? Or was it because of the
Yeah.
accident?
Yeah, so I've always been very much into working out. That's always been part of me, especially like after college. And then but I was like, again, just like hard send on everything. So yeah, once I did that first yoga class, I was like, this sucks. Like, this is the worst. Why are we going so slow? Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to sweat. I wanted to like shake. But then now, if you are doing yoga, correctly, and I mean, not correctly, but like fully committing to yoga, you will get that same shake. You are
Right.
sweating, not even in a heated class. Like, you are sore. Yeah, I think it's just that mindset. Like, I had to get out of that full send mindset, because that's what essentially led me to burnout. That's what essentially led me to feeling lost, because I was just going without thinking. Like, I was like,
Mm.
all right, this is it. We're not considering any repercussions, and not even like the what ifs, but like, what could happen? Like, where could this lead? Is this setting me up for success, or am I just doing this for the validation? And that's something I still struggle with now, but it's definitely, I can see it happening because I've done it so many times prior. So it's like once I start to feel that, I'm like, you know what? I don't like, now it's just like, I don't care. There is no reason for validation. I know what I'm good at. I also know what I'm not good at. And I will voice that because I'm like, I'm not going to set myself up for like failure. If my boss now tells me like, hey, what about this? I'm like, I'm not going to do that. You can find someone else to do that. I have no confidence in it. And I think there's so much power in that and something that I wish I had. Again, it's a lesson that I've learned, like, but being just like, no, I can't.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a few different, I guess, directions we can go, but my general thought is I want to go into either your journey into the like health coaching space and or how that kind of transitioned to I think what you said now going into nursing. And I know we put into the questions like that sort of career transition which I think is very insightful on your end of you're into your career and deciding to make that pivot or going back into school. Where do you want to start first?
Well, what I can do is mix it all up because essentially those 3 points have led me to where I'm at now. Yeah, so I once I left the law firm, I was let go of that firm right before the pandemic. And it was so at the time my dad was battling pancreatic cancer and it was 2020, right at the cusp of the beginning. I lost my job. Then I got a one-way ticket to Korea like 3 or 4 days before everything shut down. So I flew out there. And that was like sort of, I was in and out of the hospital in Korea, and Korea during quarantine was very different. It was not as strict. So we were in and out of the hospital a lot. And that was sort of like where I had my first introduction to a clinical environment and just kind of observing what the nurses were doing. And so, like, at that time, I like my interest was piqued. I was like, oh, this seems like something that I would enjoy. And then during that time, I really was focusing on my personal health because the way that my departure from the company was it wasn't great. It left me very traumatized. And so it took me a lot of time to try to recover. And meanwhile, it's like everything's happening in the world. But that's when I started really focusing on like, okay, my yoga, like what can I lean on? Like my yoga practice, things that I can do that aren't necessarily like in Korea, I couldn't really find a gym. And also it's like COVID time. So like it just was weird. And I also felt weird trying to find a gym while my dad was sick. Like it was a lot of places where I felt torn. So that was sort of like the first glimpse of nursing. And then once I got back into the States, I found a job with a female entrepreneur, and she focused on building businesses for female wellness entrepreneurs. And that was the first time I got introduced to health coaching. I didn't know what health coaching was. And then once I figured out what health coaching was, I was like, oh, I was really interested in nursing. I feel like health coaching is somewhere in between where I don't have to necessarily go through like an entire like school curriculum. It was a 6-month program. I was going to get certified and then essentially be able to coach people. And that's where I was like, oh, this is something that I align with so much because not only do I want to help people, I think the biggest thing was like I wanted to help people, but it was such a great way to connect after the pandemic and people were on a huge health kick. And so everyone sort of had their different paths, but health coaching at that time was sort of perfect because people like in the pandemic, like didn't really know how to like take care of themselves. They were like, I'm working out, I'm doing all these things. Like, how can I keep up with this post pandemic? So that's how I got into health coaching and it was really fun. And then I guess the portion of the company that I was working for with the female entrepreneur, she collapsed that part. So then I was out of a job again. My partner was like, you're really good at being fun employed. I was like, listen, if that's my career in life, I will take it. He was like, you are really good at that. I was like, and I think because I'm someone that like, I was like, as a startup, let's do it. I was like, I want to be able to be part of something. And again, that's where that validation still kind of stuck around. And then I ended up finding a job, the job that I'm currently at, that is a health coaching school. So I got certified through them and then sort of went through building my health coaching business. And when I had first started my role at my current job, I had a little bit more time and there were resources. They were like, you know what, try these things out, get to know our program. So I was utilizing all the resources. So I was able to build my business. I was taking in clients and it was really fun. But then work got really busy. And so I had to slowly start to wean off the number of clients. And then eventually I had to just sunset my business. I just couldn't keep up with it. And I was like, it's unfair for like my clients to show up and I'm unavailable. And that was the
Mm,
same thing like showing up as a yoga teacher. If you're not in the right mindset, you're showing up, in a way that's not going to serve who you're trying to serve. So at that point, like 2020, 2021, right as I moved to Colorado was like when I was heavily into holistic health and wellness. And then I was doing all these different types of things because I had been certified from two different schools. And the current company I work for is very paleo, like keto, we're like primal based. And so I was following that for a while. And then I realized it just didn't align with my body. And then I felt like, how could I coach this to my clients if I am not
mm,
getting the results or like feeling great myself? So then I started to shift my business as well to it evolved more to like female health and wellness. So it was like tracking your cycle. Then I got really into like, let's bring what I love. So like working out, like sort of that like again, heavy lifting. Let's bring that back in. How could I meet in the middle with that? So I started focusing on clients, helping females with like cycle tracking, working out during different phases of their cycle. And then that was working for me really well. But again, I started seeing signs of burnout with my current company. Like the role was starting to get really rigorous and we're all remote. So it's hard because I didn't know who to connect with in terms of like, because I still am the only person in the marketing department. But when you're that one person, like you don't know who you're supposed to like ask help for.
mm,
And my boss lives in Australia. So when his day starts is when our day is ending. So like that time difference in the beginning was really tricky. Now it's like we kind of have a system down. But I started seeing signs of burnout and I wanted to cut that off early. So then I was like, okay, what I can do is start cleaving off the things that I can't pay attention to, which is when I started sunsetting my business. I was still teaching yoga, but I cut down on how many courses or how many classes I was teaching. And then really just focused on like, okay, I don't want to burn out. This is my primary source of income. So I'm going to make it work in a way that I won't get burnt out, like that I won't fall into that same pattern. And then in 2022, my partner was diagnosed with brain cancer. And so we ended up kind of going through the cycle of being in the hospital again. And then at that point, I really fell in love with nursing. And I think the hardest part, like both like with my dad and my partner, for someone who doesn't know, like being in healthcare or like not having a general idea, like that feeling of being helpless was like, I don't even know the word to describe. I couldn't do anything. I was like, I could be there, but I wanted to do more. And the nurses kind of held that answer. They were like, this is a symptom. Okay, great. This is what we can do. This is how we can help. And I started talking to a lot of the nurses at that time and then really started getting into it. And I was like, I think what like my unique stance for nursing is that I have a holistic health background. Like I understand the nutritional needs, but also I'm a huge believer in science. So it's like I'm so fascinated by how well the body works to heal itself. So once I, started talking to the nurses and talked to a lot of travel nurses. And at that time, like a couple of my friends were also like kind of going through the same transition as I was pivoting their career and going into nursing. And so that had a lot of influence. And then I was like, I think this is the path that I want to take, especially because like of all that I've learned, all the influence that I've had. And then for the past 10 years, I've been in marketing and I haven't felt like I've made an impact. Like I haven't felt like I've done anything. And then so I started volunteering at the hospital. I now work part-time at the hospital. And it's been way more rewarding knowing I can physically hands-on help someone. Felt like I was almost unlocking something that like I didn't know was like locked up. Like that feeling of, okay, I don't want to feel helpless anymore. What can I do to physically be able to help? And I think it's that like almost innate feeling of like, I can't just stand there and be like, oh, everything is going to be fine. I'm like, okay, let's get into it. What's happening? And so that's essentially where that pivot slowly started to occur. And then I, now that I'm old, my prerequisites did not did not cut it. So I had to retake all my prerequisites again, which I was like, you know what, my undergrad years, like, don't look at that. But going back to school with a purpose was so much more different compared to my undergrad years. Undergrad, lack of direction, no motivation, didn't know what I wanted to do. This time, I know what I want to do. I'm so interested in it. I'm also paying for it myself. So that's like also a big thing. But it took a lot of time to figure out, and I'm sure that interest will change again. And I'm expecting that to change. But in this season of my life, nursing seems like the one thing that finally feels like it fits. And making that pivot from a completely different field and talking to the different nurses that I work with, they're like, oh, you have no healthcare background. I was like, no, I don't. Like, I have holistic healthcare. I can tell you the types of foods to eat during your period. But it is very interesting to talk to nurses who've been in nursing their entire career and they're like, I hate this job, but I love it. And I'm like, that's with any career. But at this point in my life, I've been so motivated by wanting to help and learning more about how the body works in a way that holistic health doesn't really tell you. It's essentially a pseudoscience. But I'm a huge believer in it. I love all the woo-woo stuff, but combining that with the scientific knowledge has been super eye-opening. And it's like some of the woo-woo stuff definitely is like there is a scientific backing to it, like why you feel this way. And essentially, if you get like down to the core of it, it's, oh, like this is what's causing your sodium to go up and why you start to feel like this and why breathing deeper helps with this. And so there is that meeting of the minds. And so it's been like a 180. And again, the catalysts were unfortunate events, but at the same time, it's those moments I feel like give you the clarity to figure out like what's really important. What do you align with? Is this worth it? And it's almost like even if you don't know, just go for it because you'll figure it out on the way. If I was going through like my prereqs and I absolutely hated it, I probably would have been like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I'm going to have to go to school for nursing anyways. Like, why am I putting myself through this? But going to school after you haven't been in school is such a humbling experience. But in that sense, I felt so much better about where I was in my life, knowing that I'm progressing instead of just letting myself fall back into that burnout cycle and having that choice to like lift myself up and literally turn myself around and say like, this is another option. You don't have to stay here. And so it's like, again, in the future, if I'm like, you know what, nursing isn't for me, I can like, I've done it before. So I'm like, pick myself up, figure out what else is something that like I enjoy. But yeah, I think it's tough because it's easy to stay comfortable. But that's like, I'm afraid of complacency. I'm like, no, I can't just,
That checks out.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I do feel like if I'm not progressing in life, then I feel like I'm stagnant. Like I need to be doing something. We have the ability to learn. We have the ability to dig deeper, even if it's just as a hobby. If you're fully into whatever hobby, like I am like looking at the historical facts of it. I'm like, how did this come to be? Like, and it's interesting because it's like you meet so many different people when you have these like odd, like
Hmm.
interests and these like niche items, and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one that they're very little, but I'm like, oh, so I'm not the only person that thinks about this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. I think your path to where you are today is very insightful, and I think at least for me as someone listening to it, I think it gives a lot of hope because I think all of us will hit roadblocks and have these challenges that might make us pivot. But I think the way you've approached it and now have come to this point is, no short of inspiring because I think at one point in time we'll all feel kind of lost and kind of hitting our head
yeah,
against the wall. But once you can kind of direct that energy, or if someone is kind of like yourself, where they have all this pent up like energy to go in a
yeah,
direction, but you're like, but I'm gonna burn out if I don't go in the right direction. But then eventually you'll figure it out. I think
yeah,
that's like my biggest takeaway.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay, so we are at a little bit over an hour, so I would like to go to rapid fire questions. And I know you probably have a lot more, and there's a lot of questions we did not get to. So maybe if it's in the cards, we can do part two. I would love to have you back. But are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Yes,
Cool, awesome.
I'm
All right.
scared.
No, it'll be, this is the fun part, at least for me. Okay, again, the name of the game, rapid fire questions, but you don't have to go fast on the questions and you can pass any ones that you don't want to answer. So first one is billboard question. If you could put up a sign for millions of people to see, what would it say? Metaphorical, non-commercial.
I know. I was like, coming from marketing, I'm like, all I can think about is marketing
That's what I was
signs.
like. I could see it. I could see it.
I would put, I would put a bunch like really cute pet photos and say, "Have a nice day."
I like it. I've never gotten that before, but I like it. Okay, next one. What is one of the hardest challenges you faced in your life and would you learn from it?
Well, everything discussed in this podcast, I think the biggest takeaway from probably the hardest things is when it comes to work-life balance, it's really not that hard. Like, work is just work. There are things in life that you don't like it. I feel like people put a lot of pressure on it, but once it comes down to it, like, just enjoy what you're doing, figure out what it is that you like, because otherwise you're just gonna hit your head against the wall and not be happy.
Right. Okay, next one. It's an either or. So if you could either redo one thing, what would you do differently? Or if you could give your younger self advice, what would it be?
If I could redo something, I would go back to college and actually try. I think that would be my yeah,
Nice. I feel that. Because it's
yeah,
hard because it's not that I don't think we wanted to try, because I feel the same way, but it's more just like we also didn't really know what to do
yeah,
at that point, right? So,
yeah. I think it's
mhm,
also difficult to have an 18-year-old choose their
of
major
course.
that's going to,
Yeah.
set the course for their life. And I think about like when I'm taking classes with 18-year-olds and I'm like, "Oh, what are you trying to do?" And they're like, "Oh," they say something and then they stop showing up to class. I'm like, "Well, technically you're my lab partner." Like, I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well," and at the time it's like you're away from home, at least I was. And so I spent my years partying, I spent my years doing all the things, and now it's out of my system, and I don't crave it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, "It's done."
Yeah, definitely. I feel it. Okay. How do you define success?
I think success changes, and it doesn't have to be, like, one thing. I think it could be success in multiple different areas. So it could be success in your social life, depending on, how strong your relationships are, success in your financial, like, how secure you feel, and it doesn't have to be comparable with other people's numbers. I think it definitely is defined by your own terms rather than trying to hit, like, a goal, like a threshold. I think success can change any day and it can go lower or it can go higher just depending on what part of your life you're in.
Okay. I like it. All right. I'm curious how you'll answer this one, but it is if you knew you, okay, so the original question is if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? But actually, this version is if you knew you would fail regardless, what would you do anyway because the journey is worth it?
I think right now, like exactly what I'm doing, there's a lot of uncertainty. Like if I get into the nursing program that I'm applying to, it's an accelerated program, so it's Monday through Friday. I can't have a full-time job. Like
Uh,
I'm like, where's my source of income? I have no idea, but it's like at the end of the day, like I'm just gonna go for it because I will be sad if I don't. Like, you know, I could lose a lot, but I could also gain a lot.
right, right. It's one of those things like minimizing regrets, right? Like you know
Yeah.
that by doing it, you're not going to regret it, even if it succeeds or fails, whatever. At least you know that you went for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's something that you've been pondering recently or have been thinking about deeply often, if we haven't already covered it?
I think that's a good question because I feel like I go through these all randomly throughout the day. I think I do think about, so I love being alone and I'm really good at doing things by myself. I think what I do ponder is if it's an inability or a fear of connecting with people. I think when I meet someone new, I meet them without that thought that I might be friends with them for a really long time. I almost feel like I do it in a very superficial way where I go into the mindset of, I'm going to meet you, but I'm probably never going to see you again. So it's, I've noticed that. And I think maybe because I spend too much time by myself, my partner is very rambunctious, like very out there. So he's the one that like talks to a bunch of people. And then he's like, by the way, we got invited to their housewarming party. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you just met them. So I think in that sense, like meeting people, I can talk. I can talk a lot, as you guys can, as you know. But yeah, I ponder like, is the fact that I spend a lot of time and I'm so comfortable being alone almost a detriment to my social life?
I like that a lot. I feel like I've been pondering some similar things, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll go into that another time. But I like that. Okay, do you have a favorite hot take or something that you think most people won't agree with? Doesn't have to be controversial necessarily. I like to
Yeah.
think of it as like something that you just think is true, but you don't think most people also believe it's true, right? Like not necessarily like a controversial take, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say, so I've been saying this a lot. There are a lot of like, because I've been shopping for Black Friday, like snowboard gear and stuff, winter gear. I would love for more female designers or women centered designers to create clothing in a male dominated sport for women. Like, I have a balaclava that doesn't, and I'm sure this is out there. I was running today, and my balaclava is definitely designed for men because there is no hole for your ponytail. So my hair, like, there are things like that where I will just complain. Women's bibs, snowboard bibs, there are very few that have a butt flap so you can actually go pee.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, there are things like that that I'm just like, a man designed this without a woman in mind. I get really pissed about it because it is very inconvenient.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like those things don't exist? That's crazy.
I'm
Like,
sure it does, but it's not as like prevalent. Like,
gotcha, yeah.
yeah, like you can order all these things. Like I definitely search for bibs, like snowboard bibs that have a butt flap. But you would
Yeah,
think
yeah,
all women's like
right.
snowboard gear should have that. They don't. Same thing with like I'm going to be like very winter, but snowboard boots, it's really hard to find. Like there are plenty of women's boots, but if you go to like REI or some type of like gear
I
shop,
see.
the men's section is huge.
Right.
And then you go to the women's section and it's like maybe two sections. Same thing with sports. If you go to like a sports like shop like at the game and you go check out all their clothes, it is all like jerseys are kind of unisex, but like men, and
Mm,
then it's women. And I'm
small
like,
section.
yeah, and I've been that's something that I've been like very stuck on lately because I'm like, well, it looks like a man designed this. But I have been finding a lot of inconveniences.
Right.
Just yeah. So that's my hot take.
I
Women
like
should
it.
be designing a lot more of these
Right,
things.
right. So my thought is it like a supply and demand thing because there just aren't a lot of women in those spaces, and so therefore like the market doesn't ask for a lot of it, and therefore you have to kind of go out of your way to find it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I am definitely, I will say, like in my life, the sort of segments of things that I'm interested in are very male dominated, which is funny because I am like a full send person.
Right, right, right.
So it's like snowboarding, very male dominated, minimal like women's stuff, sports. I go to a
Right.
lot of like games and not very female centric. Even if you go to like a female focused game, it's not, it's like more unisex and they're being inclusive about it. But I am like, I would like something that is there's like a little bit more options.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do realize that. And I think like Colorado, because it's so outdoorsy and there's like so much stuff, there's like more available, but it's hard to find. Whereas like my partner, he's like, oh, I just found these boots. Look at these. And I'm like, oh, it's taken me like 5 months to figure out like which boot works for me. And then, every year he buys a brand new snowboard.
Yeah.
And this will be my like last thing because I know we're going over on time.
It's okay.
So we have powder boards and there are a lot of male, like they can be unisex, but they're for males. And powder boards, they're like surfboards. So they have a pointed nose and the tail could either be like a swallowtail. Sometimes it's not at like the same uniformed as like a normal snowboard that you would see. I wanted a powder board so badly and it took me forever to find one that's for females because I'm shorter. Finally found a company that like I was like, they make my size, they make multiple options, and then they shut down.
Oh, womp.
Yeah. But that was like another thing. Like I was like, all these guys have so many snowboard options and they just think us girls don't need like all these special boards. And then
Hmm.
so and it's also very interesting when I do have my special boards or like multiple things, but they'll say, "Oh, I didn't know that they made like girl size in that." And I'm like, "Okay." Or I've been riding for a long time. And again, I ride with a lot of guys because like you mentioned, it's not as many females. So it's sort of like a I don't know if it's a blessing in disguise, but it's because I ride with the guys, they always go to tougher terrains. And I'm like, why did I do this? Like, why am I here? But because you're challenged, like you end up
Mm.
navigating and obviously you start to improve. And one, it's like I'm the only girl. So it's like I have to keep up or else I'm just going to be lost in the trees. So sometimes I'll get comments like, for a girl, you ride really well. And I'm like, I think for a boy you ride okay. Like, why would you say something like that? So those are the things that recently I have been very focused on and honed in on because I'm like, what is this situation?
I like it. Dang,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, on almost on the similar topic, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made in either time, money, energy, etc.?
Whew. I think the best investment I have made, I guess two things. One, going back to school and investing in my education, because I think as you get older, you don't really think about that. And I think additionally, I know I said earlier it's kind of a detriment to my social life, but spending time with myself. I think, you know, when I was in my 20s, it was really, really difficult to be alone and do things by myself. And it took years to get comfortable with that. So spending time with getting to know who I am, like, and finding what, if I am by myself, like what triggers me to feel uncomfortable, like eating by yourself. Am I going to pull out my phone? Am I going to try to connect with someone like if I'm out somewhere? And another thing, like I don't drink anymore. So one of the things is like everyone around you may be drinking. How do you sit with being okay with that? And that was also a big thing. And I think that was part of the journey of learning to be comfortable with myself. But it definitely, I think, investing time in yourself without any distractions, like learning to kind of detach. Because, I mean, I think it's very clear that we're all very stuck to any type of media. And it's tough to kind of go back to like when you were younger and you're like, I used to just play with my pencil. Like, yeah, like like going back to basics and learning to be okay without anything.
I like it. Okay, last two. What is a favorite recent purchase you've made recently in the, let's say, $50 to $100 range that has impacted your life the most, if anything comes to mind?
I don't know if anything comes to mind. 5,200?
50 to 100. Yeah, just like a
Oh,
relatively
50 to 100. I was
50
like,
to 100. It's like a relatively cheap purchase, the consumerism question.
I don't know. I haven't really purchased anything. I guess my scrubs.
Okay, there you go. And it's a good pair of scrubs, I assume.
Yeah, I mean it's like wearing sweatpants to work, so
Nice.
it's kind of
We
nice.
like it. Okay, last one. Any favorite books, movies, videos, articles, media, or anything else that you share or recommend the most?
So a couple things. Atomic Habits is probably the my number one favorite book. Like that's what I would send as like our like parting gift with my clients. Atomic Habits, I love fictional books, but I always tell people like I'm like you can get Audible, you can do all these things, but if you sign up for your local library, you can download books, you can help the library, and you
Mm,
could also download the Libby app to listen to audiobooks. And I don't know. I think that's really it. I can go on about books, but that's like a
yeah,
whole different, that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
different podcast.
That's
Yeah.
all good. Yeah, Atomic Habits is good, and then support your local library, I think is good too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right, that is it for rapid fire questions. You made it to the end. Congrats, Jane.
Thank
Let's
you.
go into ending questions. So we always end with gratitude. Shout out to my mom for teaching me this. So Jane, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful to be where I'm at and have the people in my life and have the opportunities. I'm grateful for my failures and I'm grateful for my successes and I'm grateful for my dog.
We like it. Cool. All right. Do you have any final ask from the audience or any final takeaways you would like them to have from the show?
I think the biggest thing is it doesn't matter how old you are or where you're at in your life. If you are unhappy, you have the choice to make changes, and change won't happen unless you actually act on it.
Okay, final question. Jane, if people want to see what you're up to or connect or anything like that, if you're open, do you have any places where they can find you? If not, it's totally fine, but just asking.
Yeah, I mean, I have my personal, but for someone in marketing, I don't care about my social media presence at all.
Yeah, we're
So,
kind of the same.
unfortunately, no place to find me.
Yeah. You're just gonna have to send good vibes into the universe to
Yeah.
hopefully it reaches Jane. Nice, we like it.
Yeah.
All good. Okay. All right. Jane, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your story. I think it was fantastic and I've personally got a lot from it. Hopefully the audience will enjoy it as well. So
Yeah.
thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks
I'll,
for having me. Thanks for thinking of me.
yeah, of course. It's always nice to connect with old friends, old colleagues and everything like that. And
Yeah.
then just pick your brains on what you've learned. And that's the whole ethos of this show. So cool. All right. I will do my final sign off for the audience before I stop the recording. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, comments, all that fun stuff. I would say leave Jane love in the comments. She probably won't see it. So just leave me love in the comments, I guess, for my own ego.
Yeah, you
Um,
can send it to me.
yeah, I'll let Jane know that you guys say nice things if you guys do say anything. Yeah, reminder to always be kind to other people, especially yourself. And remember that you can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.